Chapter 6 Mr. Flicker's Plans. In a little while, Mr. Flicker returned from his trip to the pasture to see the Woodchuck brothers. Hurrying into the orchard, he called to Reddy Woodpecker. "They're thinking it over." "They'll want you to drum for them," Reddy assured him. "There's no doubt that the Woodchuck brothers will accept your offer. Why don't you move up to the pasture at once? You'd find it handy living in the woodchuck's dooryard." "I can't do that," said Mr. Flicker. "You forget my family." "Move them too," Reddy urged him. But Mr. Flicker shook his head. "I don't believe my wife would be willing," he replied. "Besides, there's that piece of tin on the roof of the barn. Would you advise me to move that?" "No!" Reddy cried hastily. "Don't move the tin! In fact, Mr. Flicker, I shouldn't move at all if I were you." But Mr. Flicker had liked the plan of moving to the pasture to live. He had found great quantities of ants there, and to Reddy's dismay, he insisted that he should move and take the strip of tin with him. That is to say, he intended to move as soon as his wife gave him permission. It was no wonder Reddy wished he had never put such an idea into his cousin Mr. Flicker's head. He had hoped to get rid only of Mr. Flicker and his drumming. He had never dreamed that Mr. Flicker would want to take the precious bit of tin with him when he went. Shortly afterward, Mr. Flicker reported that it was just as he had thought. Mrs. Flicker wouldn't listen to moving just then, but later, after the children learned to fly and could feed themselves, she would have no objection to the change of residence. Reddy Woodpecker cocked an eye toward the roof of the barn. "That tin," he said, "you can't take it with you when you move. It belongs to Farmer Green." "Oh," Mr. Flicker exclaimed, "I thought it belonged to you. And I knew you wouldn't object to your cousins borrowing it for the rest of the season, now would you?" But Reddy Woodpecker wasn't going to answer any dangerous questions. "The tin is Farmer Green's," he declared. It seemed as if Mr. Flicker were full of alarming thoughts. "I wish," he said, "we'd have a cyclone that would rip that tin off the barn and carry it up to the pasture." "Oh my goodness!" cried Reddy Woodpecker. And he worried dreadfully all the rest of that day. There's no knowing when he would have stopped fretting had Mr. Flicker not made a certain report to him the following morning. "The Woodchuck brothers don't want me to drum for them," he announced. "Then you aren't going to move," cried Reddy. "No," Mr. Flicker replied, "and I don't intend there shall be any cyclone either." So at last, Reddy Woodpecker felt better.